Sing around a campfire and sing our campfire songs. EMPFIRE, sing our campfire songs. Now we'll see you sing on. Dude, have you seen the SpongeBob anime openings, dude? They're so fucking sick.
Yeah, I've seen like all of them.
I have too. I have recently. They're so freaking good, dude. Dude, I've actually been like coming up with comic ideas and drawing like more recently. And I've come up with a lot of interesting fucking ideas. Like I have a shit ton. Like I've actually started. Actually, you know what? I have a story that I started writing. If you want to hear it,
Sure.
this is just like for fun. It's horror-esque, and I've read it to a lot of people. I've made a story called Covered in Red that's based off of an image that had my whole class in silence. I could read you that one too. Covered in Red is a smaller one, so I'll probably start you off with that, and then go to the one that I haven't finished yet. Covered in Red. I'm surrounded by a black abyss when suddenly a noise, a
Wait,
horrific noise.
hold on for a second. Alright, now continue.
I am surrounded by a black abyss with suddenly a noise, a horrific noise. Is it water? Is someone drowning? Choking, gargling, coughing. Something's wrong, but I can't seem to wake myself. Suddenly, I jolted up from my slumber. It was only a weird dream. I looked over to witness a horror unlike anything anyone could ever possibly imagine. The love of my life is dead, covered in red. I could only dread. I can't think or react, only cry. I stumbled off my bed to walk out my chamber door when realization hit. I don't have a lover. I looked down to my hand to see a knife covered in red. How was that?
I was very entertained.
This is a lengthy one. It's not finished, but I want to see if you got the references. The cabin in the woods. Raining. Absolutely pouring. If there were any time to use the term raining cats and dogs, this would be the perfect time to use it. As for the other details of the setting, darkness. You couldn't see any further than your own hand. Using a flashlight wouldn't even help from all the rain. Thank God I'm sitting next to this fireplace on the couch curled up in a blanket. The only light there is comes from the fireplace. As of where I'm staying, hundreds of acres of darkness, dark forest. I'm in a small, shabby cabin. This cabin was my grandparents' they gave to my mother when Grandpa passed away a few years ago. Ever since, the condition of the poor little cabin would worsen every year due to neglect. The poor house just sat there, and the college that I attended was only a couple hours away from here. I asked Mother if I could use the cabin as a place to stay, so I didn't have to pay for a dorm, and staying home was too far to be an option. Plus, I like to get away from the drama from my siblings. When I'm in town, it's small, quiet, and quaint, just like Grandpa and Grandma's old cabin. The one I'm staying in, alone, surrounded by hundreds of acres of woods and rain. I'm left in the solitude with my thoughts. People at school and around town have named these woods that this cabin sits on, Ritual Forest. The summer of 1987, there was a group of kids playing in the woods. The neighbor boy and another boy, by the name of Baxton, played in these woods as usual boys do with creative imaginations. They made forts, played games, and shot pellet guns. The parents loved it when the kids were out of their hair, so the parents really didn't care if they were out late. Well, one night, it was later than usual. The boys never came home, so the parents sent out a search party for them. Eventually, they were found, surrounded by candles and a pentagram made of rocks left in the soil, with dried up blood. The boys were dead, one found shoved into a hollow tree and the other, poor Baxton, mutilated into pieces in a bag buried in the leaves. Only 2 of the suspects were captured and put in prison for life, but there were claims of being up to 11 different people that attended that horrific night. My grandfather was close friends with those boys at school. This is why my grandpa wouldn't let us play any further in the woods than what his eyes could see. But what bothered Grandpa the most was that night he had his window up to let the breeze in, and he swears on his life that he heard the horrid screams of his friends coming from deep within the forest. He was traumatized. For a long time, he was questioned by the cops, even went to therapy to help him cope with the trauma. After all, to the day he passed, he never slept with the window open again. People say when you're in the woods late at night, you can still hear the horrific screams of those poor boys in the woods from that evil night. There was a sudden knock on my wooden cabin door. It was Brandon Baker. I texted him to come over so we could talk to pass time. This cabin was old, but still had cable and Wi-Fi, working electricity, and warm running water. There was a nearby well where the cabin's water came from. I've been keeping the lights off and not spending much time on TV because my grandma also pays bills for the cabin, and the neighbor, who is a half hour away, comes to check on it from time to do repairs from time to time. After Brennan came in from outside, he mentioned how bad it was raining out, and that he had made a mad dash at the front porch. We have known each other for a long time, since the end of middle school through high school, and we got to the same college. I'm so glad you made it, Brandon. No problem. I had nothing else to do in the start of Thanksgiving break. I didn't have any plans, so why not? Hey Alex, how long have you had this cabin? Brennan asked as he puts his jacket on the coat rack. It's been in my family for a while, really. We would come and visit our grandparents in the holidays, and that's about it. We sat on the couch and I told him the story of the poor boys and legend of the woods. With a look of distraught, he mentions, "Why would people do that to little kids? For that's not right." I agreed. It makes me sick thinking about it. Quickly trying to change the subject before I could even say anything, a loud cry comes out from deep within the woods. Brendan's face turns pale. I'm sure mine doesn't look any different, stunned and in misbelief. I've heard these sounds before. Grandpa always told me it was deer settling in the night, but now that the story of the boys are fresh in my mind, I'm starting to think otherwise. Suddenly, Brandon jumps up and says, "We need to see if anyone's in danger. Do you have any flashlights?" Are you crazy? It slightly stopped raining. It's pitch black. You want to drag my ass out into the middle of the woods so to see if anyone's hurt. You're not thinking rationally. Why would anybody be out there in the rain at this hour? I exclaimed. You're right, but if I hear it again, we should call the cops, just in case. Okay, if we hear it again, or if it sounds like there's any type of struggle, we'll call 911. But in fact, we did hear it again. But not just one screams, but two screams. Ear-piercing, blood-curdling screams. We had no choice but to call the authorities. It was too surreal. After I got off the bus with the local police department and filled them in the situation, and that we were not 100% positive that they were animal screams, that they were dispatched someone who would be there shortly. After that, I hung up the phone, returned on the TV to ease our minds for a bit, started watching Tsunami on Adult Swim, and watched some animated shows. The show was about a boy who had special powers that let him communicate and make contact with the dead. He had a part-time job at an office owned by an ex-office worker who was inspired to make a career on exercising spirits for an old magazine ad. You get that reference?
Wait, say that again?
Alright. The show was about a boy who had a special power that let him communicate and make contact with the dead. He had a part-time job at an office owned by an ex-office worker who was inspired to make a career in exercising spirits from a magazine ad. Can you name that anime?
I would say Death Note, but I could be wrong.
No, it's Mob Psycho 100.
Oh, I haven't seen that show in so long.
I know, right?
He does? Really? Oh no, wait, that's somebody else, isn't
Yeah,
it?
he creates his master, aka his master, whatever his name was, creates pretty much an exercising for people based off of a magazine ad, but really he would just give people massages.
Oh,
The
what
boy
the
and
heck?
his elder employer are working a case on how a boy went missing in the woods. They received a request to find the missing boy, to see if it was the doing of an evil entity. Half an hour passes, and right at the good part where the evil spirit has the innocent boy in his grasp, and the main protagonist levitates in the air with glowing white eyes, ready to make battle with the demon, there's a loud pounding on the cabin old wooden door. I jumped out of my old recliner and I was peacefully sitting in to answer the door. The police finally showed up. The two officers asked to speak to the both of us about the screams. As we described the ghastly screams, the officers looked at each other, into the dark woods, then back at us. They seemed as if they were going to brush it off and head back to the car. It happens again, but this time, louder than before. Now the two officers have no choice but to investigate the loud, horrific noise. One walked back to grab a shotgun from the back of the squad car, and the other turned on the flashlight. They told us to go back inside, not to worry, and that they had everything handled and situated, and that everything was under control. They turned and shuddered as they walked into the black abyss and faded to blackness as they followed the main trail in. That's what I got so far.
Not bad.
Dude, that was... Bro. I have ideas of like how I want to continue it. Like, the cops end up taking too long, or these people, like, the main characters fall asleep like watching shows and stuff, and it's morning and the squad car is still outside, and then there's like backup, and they wake up to like a pounding on the door asking for backup, or the backup asking them what happened to the other officers. Either like the officers are like killed or whatever, and I can go on to make it like there's like a negative entity that's in the woods that's feeding off of like the negative energy that's in the woods, and made a stronger entity of itself feeding off the negativity of everyone's like thought in the town. Like, you know how Slender Man was like a fake being, but like if you like take all of your negative thoughts and like fears, that there's something that'll feed off of that and then create the entity that everyone was like fearing. That's how I'm gonna do with this. Or like I'm gonna have it like there's a part where they like run through the woods and like one of the characters trips and falls, and then like when they trip and fall, they actually brush the leaves out of the way, and they figured out it's a stoned pentagram that was left behind.
Damn.
Yeah. And you find out that those screams aren't deer settling into the woods.